know how much our property taxes are, but what about property maintenance? So this is a very timely webinar because I know that a lot of our investors are wondering how much should they set up for a budget, how will they know what they need to have for repairs and maintenance as far as their cash reserves go. So it's a timely purpose to have this webinar here today. And so we're going to talk about property maintenance. If you have any questions at all about what we're talking about here, feel free to type in the question on the chat box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You'll see an area there that you can see that you can type in a question to us. If you have a question during this presentation, feel welcome to type it in there. And if you just want to test it and type in a big hello in there, well, feel free to do that as well. And we'll be more than happy to get back to you with any answers to any questions that you have. So again, welcome everybody to our Truth About Property Maintenance webinar. I'm your host, Travis Cabin. This webinar should take about 20 minutes to get through, and thanks for joining us. As most of you know, Arizona Investar is a full turnkey real estate investment provider. And what that means that we provide you all of the aspects that are required for you to not only acquire your property, but actually run your property, maintain your property through the process. So once you buy a property from Arizona Investar, of course we assist you through our property management where we find a qualified tenant for your home. The property management enters into a lease agreement with that purchaser, with that tenant, the tenant moves into the home, and of course property management manages it through the entire process. And in some cases the tenant can actually become an owner of the property if the investor wishes for that to take place through our rent-to-own program. So again, we are a full turnkey real estate investment provider. Not only provide you great investment-grade properties, but we look after the insurance, the property management, and the maintenance for you as well. Today we have a very special guest on with us today, Mr. Ryan Howder. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's a privilege to have you on. And Ryan is the VP of Property Management for us, and just does a fantastic job and is just a true professional in the property management space. So we thought he'd be the right person to have on the line when we're talking about property maintenance. And are you getting a lot of requests for people wondering how to set up their maintenance accounts, Ryan, or how do you really help somebody through the process when they're talking about, Ryan, what should I do for property maintenance? How do I allow the budget for that?
A lot of things as far as what we've done over the years is we've kind of fine-tuned this area because it can be such a massive expense. Owners can literally lose their cash flow for the year just by preventative maintenance and doing certain things that will help them out in the long run. And so we set kind of things in place, recommendations and items like that will hopefully help them get a better idea of what to expect, or give them recommendations on to save them from a nightmare that could be down the road that we could have prevented. But a lot of that's going to come down to the right contractors, the right tenant, and there's kind of quite a few little variables that go in there to make that successful.
Sure, no, fully understand. So you're talking about preventive maintenance. You're talking about things we can do on an ongoing basis to prevent major items from having to be replaced and a big expense being incurred, but really kind of planning for maintenance items to be done.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. So we talk about what is property maintenance, and really property maintenance, very similar to what Ryan just said, this is the ongoing cost to ensure wearable items are maintained to keep your investment property in top shape. So it's these things that Ryan talked about from a preventive maintenance perspective, but also making sure that you have a built-in budget that allows for the maintenance items to be done, whether it be on a monthly or a semi-annual or annual basis, but also allow for the wearable goods to expire and have that money in there for them to expire. So property maintenance is critical to make sure you got the proper budget as you set up your performing your budgets for your investment property. There's certain examples of things that these would include when we talk about property maintenance, and of course, it's the appliances. Now that includes the fridge, the stove, the dishwasher, and the hood fan, the air conditioning unit, the heater, plumbing, and that could be anywhere from your faucets to your seals, to your valves, to your elbows. Flooring could be your tile, could be your lino, could be your carpet. The painting, either you do periodic painting throughout the home and just as touch-up painting, or in some cases you actually paint the entire home inside, and sometimes the outside we actually like to paint that as well. Landscaping, looking after certain things in the landscaping, make sure that they're touched up. Now, most of the landscaping requirements in Phoenix are pretty minimal, Ryan, because you don't have like the big front and rear yard full of grass and things like that in most cases. What do we scheme for landscaping?
Yeah, a lot of that, you're absolutely right, because of the seasons and the temperature changes. Obviously, you're not dealing with a lot of that. So your water bills are going to be a little bit lower. There's a lot of gravel landscape, which is easy to maintain. And a lot of times that's going to be a little more tenant-friendly because we put the landscape responsibility back on the tenant during the lease signing, and it's easier for them to maintain that than, you know, mowing a lawn or keeping a lot of stuff green as far as that goes. So it's pretty basic and usually the benefit to the owner.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'd see some electrical items that need to be done on a regular basis. Of course, the smoke detectors, making sure the batteries are changed out on the smoke detectors. Some smoke detectors are hardwired to the electrical system, but most always have an electrical backup system via the 9-volt batteries. Weather stripping around the doors, and of course caulking around the windows and tubs and sinks and things like that. So these are not all of the items, but these are pretty good examples of some of the maintenance items you'd be looking at on a regular basis. Ryan, would there be anything else you think you'd want to add to this list?
You know, those are pretty basic as far as the necessarily bigger ticket items or those things that might have the most impact on a maintenance budget throughout the year. So yeah, you've pretty much hit on all those.
Okay, sounds good. Why is it important to ensure your investment property is maintained? Ryan, I think you're probably the most qualified one to really kind of go through this and really talk about, you know, what is the benefit to ensuring your property is maintained? We all know that it's good to maintain your properties, but there's really some big things here, and maybe you could just kind of walk through these items.
Yeah, and all four, you know, once again, you hit the nail on the head with, you know, the attraction for new tenants, because there are going to be certain areas where it's going to be a little more saturated as far as rentals. You want your property to stand out. You can, in a lot of cases, even get higher rents for the kind of work you put into the property. An example I've used so many times, we had a property in Gilbert we managed. We had actually two on the same street, and one owner, every time he came in and he offered $100 more per month on rent, but he went in and he changed a few of the light fixtures, did a little bit different landscaping, and just modified a few things so that his property stood out, and his always rented sooner, more than the one down the road that we managed as well, at $100 more per month. And you know, and it just goes back to that curb appeal. It's real estate 101. If your property looks good, that is just going to pull more tenants. And then obviously your note here on the tenants stay longer. We kind of have a standard we use with our properties that it has to be this certain level, and that's how we've been able to maintain that 2.5-year average of our tenants staying longer. On top of the fact that we do respond quicker to maintenance calls that tenants obviously appreciate and go through, which is another big key as far as that goes. But you know, at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. You're going to get what you pay for, and it's going to last longer and maintain its value as well.
And let's face it, Ryan, when somebody goes into a property and if somebody's a renter, they're probably looking at more than one rental. Now, they're probably looking at a certain area or a subdivision that they like, but they're going to look at a couple properties, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe even more than that. But what's going to make them choose a property is how that property makes them feel when they walk into it. So things that would make them feel good would be it's bright, it's fresh, it has maybe newer, fresher type of feel to it. So that could either be the paint, it could be the carpet, it could be the cleanliness of the counters and the floor. It could be making sure that all of the light fixtures have light bulbs in them that work, and make sure that when they walk into the home, it feels like a home and not maybe like a rundown rental. Now, everybody's trying to get their top dollar for their rentals, and so everybody's probably going to be trying to maximize their dollar, but what's going to get their application coming forward is how that property makes them feel when they walk into it. Does it stand above the other ones that they saw that are of comparable price in that subdivision that they're looking at?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's not necessarily saying go out and spend thousands of dollars for these massive upgrades. It was just such simple items that might have been a few $100s, and that's all that made the difference. It was just, something different from anything else, and they could tell that there was some time and effort put into it, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. And then, of course, the end result is, of course, we're maintaining our value of our property. Because we're maintaining it on a regular basis, we're going to have a better value of our property as we move through the years. And it doesn't matter whether you want to sell it or not to say, I have a good value in my property, or I'm keeping up with the market on my valuation of property. It helps with your rental, and, of course, it helps with any appraisal you're going to get done on it. And then, of course, it helps with the ultimate sale price you'll get for that property. But what we're looking to do is offer great housing options for our clients and our clients for our tenants.
Yeah, and we get a higher percentage when a tenant goes into a home that is well maintained and looks good. There's a higher percentage of us getting it back looking good again. It's astounding on the numbers and the difference on that.
And you get a better quality tenant, I believe, too, Ryan, eh?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure, because usually good quality tenants, they look good quality properties, and usually they're looking for that equal match. So those are all good valuable points there. Let's take a look at the maintenance costs, and let's dig into the maintenance cost aspects as to what we're looking at. And we know there's lots of different line items when it comes to maintenance costs that we should allow for, but let's talk about how do we budget for these line items. So we talked about exactly what are the line items, how do we budget for them, and basically we feel there's really two approaches as to how you can budget for these line items, and I think both of these are both strong points. So the first one is you can take a percentage of your rent every month, and the rule of thumb seems to be 5% a month that goes to your maintenance account. Now, whether you set up a separate bank account or you set up just a separate line item on your accounting spreadsheet to say, I'm going to put this much money into we call them bucket accounts, which is going to be my maintenance account, 5% is a good rule of thumb. Another way to do it would be when you acquire your property to set up a 3-month, we call them contingency funds, of your total expenditures for all your contingencies. So if your total expenses to run your property for a month are, say, if you have a mortgage on there, say allow for $700 a month, if that was your total expenses. Well, then what we recommend is you put up $2,100, so 3 months, and call that your bucket account, reserve account. That would cover all of your contingencies, not just for your maintenance, but it also, if you had a vacancy for 30 days and you want to clean up the house, it will allow you for the mortgage payment, your maintenance costs, your insurance, your taxes, while that home is vacant, while you're doing your repairs. If a few years down the road you had to put some money into your heating unit or your AC unit, well, having that contingency factor would allow you to do that. Now, let's say that your bucket account was capitalized to $2,100, and say that you spent $300 from that bucket account. Well, after you spent the $300, we would just ask you put the $300 back into that account to always maintain it at a value of $2,100, which would be about 3 months of your total expenditures. And that's what we recommend for our investors. So who does maintenance on my Arizona Investar property. And Ryan, there's nobody better to answer that question than you. So maybe you can kind of roll through this and talk about who does the maintenance on the properties.
Yeah, and we actually have contractors that we have contracts with that we provide estimates and go through that. But we make sure they're all licensed and bonded. The contractors we use, we've been dealing with for years. They know what we expect as far as their work. They know that we go and double check it when it's done. They know they're not to be paid until it's done. But it's something, once again, that we've kind of developed over the last 10 or so years, where we've fine-tuned and made it make sense for everyone. At the end of the day, if the work is suffering and they're not doing what we're told, then nobody wins. So they know the level of standard that we require. Of course, all these estimates include photos that we send to the owners for approval, and we get that squared away before we start anything. So it's a pretty set standard that we have set in place. We have a checklist of checks and balances to make sure everything is covered, and if it's not, then they go back out and do it and don't get paid until it's done. And obviously with this in place, where the actual vendors have contracts with us, we're able to police that even more. For example, if a tenant moves in and something that was done maybe was not done correct, or it breaks that was on the estimate, that vendor will then go out and take care of that at no charge. So it's kind of like our own little warranty as well. That definitely helps out the owner in the long run. I've seen so many owners go out, and I've got one of my buddies that's going to go take care of this, and we're just not able to police that or hold them accountable if something goes wrong, later that should have been done right.
And I think it's a benefit that a lot of our investors have with dealing with our firm, because we manage so many properties, and we've pretty much encountered pretty much every maintenance aspect that I think you can encounter, and we've got the proven trades that are there to execute the work. So it's not like, the air conditioner is broken, we better figure out, who can fix air conditioners. We actually know who fixes air conditioners and actually do a real good job on them, and at a very fair price. And they know that if they don't do good work, they're going to get accountable to us, which is a big account, and so they want to perform for us because we give them so much business. But we actually deal with credible companies that is part of their core ethics and part of who they are as an organization to offer that level of service and quality of work to make sure it gets done. And I think when we talk about the maintenance on the properties, when an investor buys an Arizona Investar property, unless we bought it and an investor bought it with a tenant in place already, it goes through a refreshment program anyways. Some properties more than others, depending on how much work needs to be done. But all of the properties that we provide to our investors, we go through and do a freshen up, and we do our own renovation work that we call our rent-ready work to bring it up to snuff. And then on a biannual basis, Ryan, you and your guys are out there doing the biannual inspections.
Yeah, and the other great thing about our own vendors, because our vendors, obviously, if there's an issue, even with the garbage disposal while a tenant's in there, they're getting into the home. They report back to us too if there's any issues or anything that the tenant might not be maintaining. So we even have our eyes in the home more than semi-annually as far as that goes. So it really works out into our favor, and the tenants know that too on that side. So it helps on both sides.
Absolutely. And then when the property comes up for vacancy, and I know the average tenant stays 2.5 years, but when the property comes up for vacancy, sure, property management is going to go do the move-out inspection, and we allow for normal wear and tear to be allowed in the home. But also, it's an opportunity where we can actually look at the home and say, the carpets may need to be looked at now for replacement, or maybe we want to look at updating whether it be the appliances or the ceiling fans or whatever it is. It gives us an opportunity to kind of get in there and take a snapshot and say, how old is the home, and is there anything that we can do in the home that that would be a good preventive maintenance item, but is there anything in the home that's going to allow us to really maximize the appeal of this home, which of course for our investors like, because it's going to maximize their rental income on the home, just to simply update it. So as we go along, as we get these vacancies, it's a good opportunity for us to get in there and maybe do a few minor touch-ups to the home, just to make sure we got a real desirable property for our renters that are going to be out there looking for a home.
Yeah, and on these move-out inspections, we actually have a field inspector that walks the home with the tenant, takes detailed photos. He has a move-out checklist that is comparable to their move-in checklist, so everyone's on the same page. And then on top of that, once he is done with the move-out, we then we'll deal with the tenant directly. And they know on their lease when they move in, there's actually a whole section set up in regards to the move out, and we actually list prices that they could be charged if something isn't done. For example, a professional carpet clean, or if the paint isn't up to par.
Sure.
So everyone knows where everyone lies, as far as that goes, and it really helps. With any type of confusion at move out.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So we get into now talking about what can I do to be proactive with preventive maintenance. And so for sure we understand that certain items on the home need to be maintained, but what can we do to actually maybe prevent some maintenance items for occurring, and maybe what can we do just to make sure that we're on top of our property, we know the condition, and maybe we're doing a few touch-ups along the way, just as a preventive maintenance area. And maybe Ryan, just walk us through some of these preventive maintenance things that we look at doing in our properties.
Yeah, you've listed good ones again. As far as and going back to what we talked about earlier with a quality tenant, these tenants when they sign their leases and everything have the understanding that they are now in charge of certain items with the property. We mentioned landscaping, pest controls in there. But they also need to know that they need to change the air filters. They need to make sure if the batteries and the smoke detectors go out, they're responsible. Light bulbs, just some of those minor things as far as that goes, because we've had AC issues, and when our vendors go out and see a filter that hasn't been changed in a year, that's going to go back on the tenant. So we have these guidelines in place to help both sides on that, but just a few of these that you've mentioned, driving by the property every 3 months, we usually have field inspectors out there that are doing stuff like that. The heating and AC is a very good one. Obviously, there's stuff that just goes out that you really can't know up front, but just getting those inspected saves a lot of money in the long run.
Sure does.
On that end. So, but yeah, you very good points on that end.
Yeah, and I think it's good that we have our field inspectors, of course, because a lot of our investors are foreign investors, so they can't actually drive by the property every 3 months. But by having the field inspector that's there, that's actually looking after that property and managing that property in that area, well, their eyes are always around that property. So if something does spike up or they see something that might need some care and attention, they can put up their hand and say, hey, listen, I think we need to take a look at this property. Let's contact the investor and give them a price on what it would cost to bring this up to speed. But it's just by being aware and being around the properties, and that's what we're able to do. One of the times that we can be able to get into the house and not have any anybody looking over our shoulder, or we're not disturbing anybody that's one of our valued tenants in our properties, is really take advantage of the vacancies. Now, of course, we don't like to have vacancies in our properties, but we know that we're in the property management business. We're in the real estate investment space. You're going to have a point in time when your property becomes vacant. But this is a great time to get into your property or allow our professionals to get into your property to really kind of look at the whole property from an overview perspective and say, now we've got an opportunity to do certain things in the home that we typically wouldn't be able to do with a tenant in the home, to maintain this property, to maintain its value, to maintain its curb appeal. Its look and its feel to entice a potential renter. Maybe talk about some of the things we look at, Ryan, when the property is vacant.
You know, a lot of it are pretty much the basic cosmetic items. Make sure the paint looks good. The carpet or flooring, whether it's, you know, all tile or whatever type of flooring you have, that it looks sharp, and then just the basic cleaning. You don't know how far that goes, and tenants, I mean, they'll check the cupboards, they check everywhere, and we obviously hear about it if there's an issue, but those simple things, I mean, as far as even how the house smells, if it's got that fresh paint or some type of smell, new home smell, goes so far in appeal to a tenant. But those are just the basic, not really expensive line items that go so far, especially in a market that, you know, you have a lot doing this on their own and are trying to cut corners, and it speaks volumes when you can go into a house and it has that new feel to a tenant.
Goes a long ways, doesn't it? Then you just got a fresh house and you got a fresh look, and you're maintaining your property as you go along. So some good points there, Ryan. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about owner's obligations and tenant responsibilities. And so we know exactly what is an owner's responsibility and an owner's obligation, and of course we're guided by our Landlord and Tenant Act, which of course is our Landlord and Tenant Act 1985. Specifically, Section 11 talks about some of the maintenance items that we need to be looking after. But so if we look at what do we have to do as an investor, and of course we always want to do more than what the minimum is that's required, because the minimum that's required is really pretty basic. It just states, from an exterior perspective, make sure that the exterior of the home is in a safe and watertight condition, and to keep the home in a safe condition, any internal installations for water, gas, electrical service, sanitation, heating, and hot water are in place. Well, we know that is pretty basic stuff, and for sure if we own a property, we want to make sure it has that at a minimum. But really our expectations for our properties and how we want to maintain these properties really goes beyond that, where we actually want a home that's clean, that's inviting, that's fresh, that's well maintained, and like Ryan said, is very clean and updated as we go along. Why? Because that's going to allow us to maximize the rent that we get from our properties. Now, we often say that our properties are blue chip type properties because we're not buying the $50,000 house in Maryvale that is going to rent to individuals who you might be a little leery at going every month to pick up your rent. That's not the properties that we buy. We buy more the blue chip properties that there's a pride of ownership in the community. These are well-maintained homes. Typically, they're 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes, 2-car front attached garage. In a lot of cases, unless it's a condominium or thing like that. But these are the types of homes that we're providing to our investors, because history tells us that the ROI for our investors is higher on these properties. And when our investor goes to sell that property, they have a couple options to sell the property. They can either sell it to another investor, or they can sell it to a homeowner. And when you buy the property for $50,000 in Maryvale, there's not a great chance you're going to sell that house to an owner-occupier, and the end result of that, it's downward pressure on your appreciation. So that's why we really kind of focus on the blue chip properties. They're a little newer, they're a little brighter, a little fresher. We just want to maintain them that way. So our obligations that we put forward for our investors is a little bit higher than, say, what the Landlord and Tenant Act would require. Now let's take a peek at some of the tenant responsibilities. And Ryan, maybe I'll let you dig into what are the responsibilities for our tenants. Now, of course, when they're renting a home, sure, they're renting it, but they have responsibilities once they're in the home from a maintenance perspective. And maybe just share some of these things with our listeners.
Yeah, just to touch on a few that I might have already mentioned. We have those guidelines in place for the tenant. I mentioned earlier about how we expect the home to look when they move out, but there's other things like the landscaping, which can be very significant, especially if you're in a HOA community, which is a homeowners association. They have certain guidelines in place for properties, whether it's weeds, overgrown landscape, anything of that nature. They can actually send violations or even fines to the property if things aren't maintained. Even going back with mentioning the light bulbs, replacing the smoke detector batteries, the pest control, anything along those guidelines must be in place for the tenant. And then you're going back even on a different level if there's certain things that might be unlivable. Sanitation issues, for example, might be a factor, or if there's damage, to the walls or anything that might be unlivable caused by the tenant, that can go back on them too. And you can immediately do what's called a constructive eviction or start that process just based on them not taking care of the property. So there's stuff in place for sure for the tenants as well that they need to maintain.
Sure, those are good points. So now, of course, when we have a repair and maintenance on our home, we want to be able to claim that against our income, because if you have an expense in your property, well, that expense on that property means that you can take that and reduce your income down, and you want to do that because you're going to be taxed based on your net income after your expenses. So we all know we have income, which is our rental income, and we all know we have expenses, and your net income is what you're going to pay tax on. So you can claim a deduction for the cost you pay to repair and maintain your rental property in the year that you pay the expense. So it's important to know that you can take that as an expense against your income, so therefore you pay less tax.
Yeah, and that's actually a huge feature for an investor, because those bills, as far as that goes, you feel like you're not getting anything out of it, but that is a massive incentive at the end of the year.
Oh yeah, it sure is, for sure. Now there's certain items that an investor may call a repair and maintenance item, when really it's a capital cost to the home that they can't expense in the year that they incur the cost. So an example of that would be if you had to replace a major item in your home, like let's say you had to replace the air conditioning unit in your home. That'd be a capital cost, and you'd have to depreciate that down over the first 3 years of its life versus taking a full expense write down on that item. Ryan, is there any other expense line items you could think of that would be considered a capital cost that you'd have to depreciate over the course of the first few years, and you couldn't take a full expense in the year the price or the expense was incurred?
Probably the only other things I can think of would probably be something like your carpet or flooring would probably be in there under wear and tear. There's other examples, maybe if there was, if it was, negligent or something like damaged, in the first period. But yeah, there's a few items in there that might be in there, which would probably fall along the cosmetics we were talking about, like the paint and that probably wouldn't be able to. But yeah, there shouldn't be too many.
No, there's not a lot that we would classify in the repairs and maintenance sections that we couldn't be able to take the full write-down in the year the cost was incurred. And it's only the bigger line items that you would have. You actually got to write it down over the first few years. You still be able to get the write-down. You just have to stretch that over a few years. So it could be worse. There could be a situation where you could not take it as a deduction at all, but here you can actually take a 100% deduction on it. And what records do you need to keep? Now, of course, from a property management perspective, when an investor is obviously incurring these expenses, they're going to get an expense invoice from us from a property management perspective. Do they need to keep those, Ryan? If so, for how long?
Yeah, and you said it best here. As far as a minimum of 5 years, at the end of every year, before January 31st, we actually send out a report that's got a cash flow statement and just a breakdown of all the income you've earned that year for that specific property. So it's just a simple breakdown, and but hold on to those for a minimum of 5 years, just to be safe, so you have that record. But yeah, that's more than enough.
Okay, sounds good. So just make sure you hang on to those records, and you can use them for your year-end taxation. And if you ever go through an audit, then of course you've got the backup support to say, yeah, here's my invoice that I have is for my expense line item. So for sure, hang on to your records. Now let's take a peek at some of the Arizona Investar kind of before and after shots of some of our homes, and you can just kind of see how some of these houses turn out as we move through the process. Now this is just one property that I'm going to show you. This would be from when we acquired the property. Now most of our houses, as our investors know, we acquire most of them through the foreclosure process. So we buy them through the trustee sale. Prior to them being made available on the MLS, we actually buy our properties before they get made available on the MLS. So it's not like we want to show you like a dirty picture, but it's important to make sure you understand how some of these houses are when we acquire the property. And now the next photo that we're going to show you is going to show you what we've done to actually improve that house, to kind of take it from where it was to where it is now. And this is a good rental property. This is a great price point in this property here. And you can kind of see what did we do versus where is the house or the property now. Now we're not looking to completely rebuild the property on the inside, because we can utilize what they have there. We just have to maybe update it. So an example of that would be the cabinets. Instead of spending thousands of dollars and on the cabinets, why not just paint the cabinets that are there now, maybe in some cases put on new handles, and it gives it that bright, fresh, clean look that our occupants are looking for. This property, of course, it got some new flooring in it, new hot water tank, re-glazed the tub, put on some new bath fixtures, and what a great rental property that's going to attract a great rental tenant. So that's a pretty good before and after picture there. Now let's take a look at a couple of properties that we have that have come available in the recent past. Now this one here this is our property we've got on Kaler. Fantastic property, community pool. This is a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, just over 1,100 square feet. And the rental income on this is $850 a month, built in 1992. Our investors were able to get into this property for just under $30,000, and what a great potential ROI on this at 19.94%. So when we talk about the rental income in relation to price ratio, we're right in line with what we've been coaching our investors as to where you want to be. And you're still getting in the market at a below replacement cost value. So you're still coming up at a great value in the price to income ratio, and versus where prices should be, we're still buying under market value. This is another fantastic property that just came available for our investors. The current price on this one is $84,900. It's a Glendale property, so it's on the West Valley. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car front attached garage, just over or just under 2,200 square feet. Price per square foot, $57 per square foot, which is a phenomenal price. Our replacement cost alone is about $110 a square foot, plus lot, plus upgrades, plus landscaping. And this home is in a very desirable location, close to schools, shopping, transportation, lots of major employers in the area. Very attractive property for a great family home here. So this property just came available, so do talk to your client care department about this property. And that wraps up our webinar presentation. Ryan, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You're always a pleasure to have on, and you're just a pro in the industry. You've been at it for so many years, and you look after so many properties for our investors down in Phoenix, and you just do a bang-up job down there. So again, thank you very much, Brian, for joining us.
Thanks again, Travis.
You're welcome. And for all of you that are out there, feel free, if you're interested in talking more about property maintenance, you have any questions at all, and you weren't able to get on there and ask it through the chat box, always feel welcome to talk to our client care department at 1-855-456-3223, or email us at info@arizonainvestar.com. On behalf of us all at Arizona Investar, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and we look forward to connecting with you real soon. Take care, everybody. Thank you.